Deal, wake up. Deal, wake up.
This is White Line from Deuces Cracked, and this is going to be episode 5 of my series PLO, which I'm doing with Phil Galfond from Blue Fire Poker. And in this episode and episode 6, we're going to do a 2-part heads up best of 5 sit and go challenge where both of us are going to be playing each other heads up. The bet that we have made is the loser is going to have to stake someone from the other site. For example, if I win, Phil is going to have to stake someone from Deuces Cracked to play in the $2,500 World Series of Poker PLO event this summer. So I hope all of you guys watching me, because as I understand it, my audio part of it is only going to be released on Deuces Cracked and Phil's only on Blue Fire. I hope all of you DC members are rooting for me, as one of you lucky members is going to get staked by Phil to play in the WSOP PLO event if I beat him here. So let's start this. Alright, so right now I guess we have to wait for the match to start. My basic strategy going into this, the first thing obviously that you have to make note of here is that it's going to be a sit and go structure as opposed to the standard cash games that I'm used to playing. The blinds are going to start at 10-20 and I think go up every 10 minutes or so. So we're only going to have 75 big blinds to start. And as you lose pots, obviously your stack is going to get smaller. 75 big blinds is the deepest effective stacks that you're going to play, and it's probably only going to be for the first hand. So right here I open Ace Queen Deuce 5 from the button. Phil leads into me. It's the very first hand. So let me pause here and clue you guys in to my thought process. I feel like because it's the first hand, I think Phil is going to be playing pretty aggressively in a lot of small pots. I feel like he's going to try to take it down and try to build up a chip lead so he can put some more pressure on me, as he's a very aggressive player. So I think in this spot, obviously folding is out of the question, as flopping top and bottom pair on a flop where no straights or flushes are possible is way too strong of a hand to fold. So it's a question between calling and raising. And I think this is a good spot to raise because if I bomb it here, I feel like he's going to be leading with a lot of hands that are going to have decent equity against me. I don't think he's going to be completely bluffing too often. He's going to have like a flush draw or like a pair plus a straight draw or some hand like that, which is not going to be strong enough to bet 3-bet in my opinion. So I think I'm going to pot raise it here and just try to protect my hand and take it down. And obviously once you pot raise, we're committed. So if he re-raises, we're going to call it off. So we're going to ship it in here, first hand of the first sit and go. And he's got top set with a gut shot straight redraw, so I'm basically drawing dead other than to hit run or 5-5. So I mean, that kind of sucks to just lose the first sit and go in the first hand. But I think my play is fine. I would have played it a little bit differently had it not been the very first hand of the sit and go. If it was like 10 hands in and we had the same effective stacks, I think I'm more likely to just call there and maybe wait for a save turn before I raise. But I think my play in that hand is fine. Alright, so here's the second sit and go underway. We have 3, 5, 5, 6 from the big blind. Phil makes it 2.5x. I'm gonna call, and we flop bottom set here. I think leading is definitely an option on a flop like this, but the problem with that is it's going to make a lot of turns difficult to play. A lot of turn cards are going to complete a straight or complete a flush, so we're not really going to be able to bet out too often on the turn for value. Debating between check raising and just check calling. I'm going to check call and see if I can let him barrel a draw here. Also, if I hit like a 4-3 deuce or like an ace, I can always check raise on like a safe card like that. And here on the river, I'm just going to check. And depending on his bet size, either check fold or check call. I mean, not the greatest result for us in this situation to just get, one bet in on the flop. But, I mean, for the same reasons that I don't really like leading, I think check raising might make the hand kind of difficult to play on the turn just because a bunch of turns are going to complete straights and complete flushes. So we're going to end up check raising and then we're going to be put into a difficult situation out of position on the turn. Let's back it up there for a second. I want to explain why I just check folded here. On this board, I feel like I'm not going to expect Phil to really bluff there on the river once I check because the 6 and queen of hearts that falls on the river basically complete pretty much any straight draw, other than maybe king queen that I possibly could have had on the flop. Any flush draw, obviously, because the hard draw gets there. So it's incredibly likely that I have a pretty high strength hand there on the river, like a straight or a flush. So I really don't think J-Man's going to bluff there. And based on his bet size, I mean, it kind of looks like he might be value betting like a small flush or like king 10 or something like that. I think he would have expected me to bet out on the river had I made a flush. So I think he does value bet king 10 here. My button strategy in this sit and go, I'm pretty much going to play like 90 VPIP from the button. Unless Phil starts re-raising a bunch, I'm also going to be open raising a lot because I think Phil plays pretty tight out of position. So we're just going to win the blinds a lot, which is a good result from the button. If I get a little bit shorter, I'm definitely going to mix in some min raises, and maybe even some button limps. We'll see how Phil reacts to those. But the reason that you want to min raise the button when you get shorter, sorry, I meant to say deeper before. But you definitely want to min raise the button as opposed to 3x it when you're shorter. Because Phil can re-raise a hand like King King Deuce 7 Rainbow. If I only have like 25 big blinds or something like that, and pretty much just get it all in on all flops. He's gonna push hot and cold equity edges with pre-flop hands more if we're shorter. Like with 75 big blinds right now, I think Phil is pretty much gonna flat King King Deuce 7 pretty much every single time, and he's probably gonna flat Ace Ace Deuce 7 Rainbow also pretty much every single time. Is how I would expect him to play those hands. So nothing too exciting so far, just a bunch of button raising and folding. Queen Jack 9-6 here with one suit. I think this is strong enough to defend against a 2.5x raise. So we flop middle pair, some backdoor straight draw potential, and a queen high flush draw. And I'm gonna lead out right here. I think if he has a hand that has an 8 in it, that's like kind of weak otherwise, he might just fold it to a single bet, maybe call once and then fold the turn. I also think this is a board that he's going to check back with a lot of hands that really can't stand too much pressure, which I think makes this a pretty good leading opportunity. And I think our hand is also strong enough that if Phil raises, we can probably call one street. So we don't really risk not seeing a turn with a hand like this. I think which are all good reasons to just lead the flop. On the turn, once the 9 falls, now that I have 2 pair and a flush draw, I really don't want to bet and get raised. if Phil made a straight here with 10-7, because we get blown off a hand that's just very likely to improve into a hand that's going to be the best by the river. And obviously on the river, we can't really value bet. Um, I mean, we could bluff here, but I really wouldn't expect Phil to fold too much that beats us. And we're good there. Gonna let Phil know that I've unchecked Automuck, so I get to show him when I bluff him out of a big pot. Although, to be quite honest, my strategy going into this match was definitely not to try to bluff Phil out of a big pot. So for the most part, I'm just gonna try to make a hand and get paid off, unless I see like a really profitable bluffing opportunity. So right here, I open ace nine deuce tray from the button. Flop is 5-7-9. I really have no backdoor potential. I only have like a naked top pair, and Phil leads that into me, so I'm just gonna fold. Um, it's not really a spot where I think bluff raising is too good because I think a lot of the hands that he's gonna lead are gonna be hands that are strong enough to call a raise, and I don't think calling is too good of a plan either in that spot because I think there are just way too many bad cards for our hand, and I think Phil can put a lot of pressure on us when we just call in a spot like that. Okay, so right here, just limp this hand from the button, and I'm just gonna min bet, see if we can induce some sort of bluff raise here. I think Phil might interpret this as just I'm trying to buy the pot, and didn't really take too much time to size my bet. So let's see if he makes a move here. Check raises a 120. I really don't see any other option than calling here. I mean, I'm not sure if Phil would check raise like a naked king 10 here. I think it's definitely possible, but he might even be able to fold that if I put in a re-raise in this spot. So I want to let him keep bluffing because I do think since I min bet in that spot, he's gonna bluff check raise me a good amount of the time, or maybe with like some sort of a draw. Now right here, king 4, 10-10. I think he continues a lot of his bluffs on this turn, and the reason for that is um, a good amount of my calling range of his check raise on the flop is probably going to be some sort of a draw like queen jack 9 or something like that. And pretty much any draw that I have, I think he's going to expect me to fold once the board pairs. So I'm definitely going to call. The river I think is close because I think at this point he probably shuts down most of his bluffs. I'm not sure if he's going to try to bluff me off. What is reasonably likely to be like trips or stronger. I'd expect him to just give up on his bluffs. I don't really see any value in betting here. I mean, there's some small chance that maybe he got tricky with like a really big hand, and we might value cut ourselves. But I really don't think there's any hand that he's gonna have check raise and then bet the turn for value, and then is gonna check call with. So I'm just gonna check back. Yep, and sure enough, he had just a gut shot. Queen 6, 5, 3 out of position. I'm just gonna fold that. My strategy in general, playing heads up PLO has been to play very tight out of position. probably like 35% VPIP or something around there, and to play very loose on the button, like 90% and higher against pretty much anyone that I play. And I'm gonna apply pretty much the same strategy here to the sit and go. I might play a little bit looser out of the big blind, and the reasoning for that is just gonna be that we're shorter and Phil is open raising to like 2.5x as his default. So I'm not only getting a better price um, on the initial call, but he's not going to have as big of a positional advantage because we're going to be shorter than the standard 100 big blinds and deeper that we would be if this was a cash game. Right here, I flop top pair and the nut flush draw. I'm just going to bet and shove this. I think this is um, more than strong enough of a hand to just go with, especially considering how deep we are. Only like 35 big blinds or so effective to start this hand. So I think this is pretty much a no-brainer. And I don't really want to call on this spot and then have like a queen come or something like that on the turn. Then he shoves, and then it's like a question of I'm almost um making just as good of a decision folding as I am calling. Where like the EV of calling and folding is just like very close. I'd rather just get it in on the flop. Um, I mean against a set there. I mean we're not in the best of shape, but we still have the nut flush draw. We're never going to be in terrible shape. And he can definitely have like a pair and like a smaller flush draw or like a straight draw and smaller flush draw against which we're going to be in good shape. So I think that's pretty much a no-brainer there. So we're tied up right now, 1-1. Going to game 3 right here. Get king 4, 3 deuce from the button, double suited. Gonna open. Let's see what Phil thinks of my play. Yeah, apparently I should have just known that he had a set and folded. So we get a pretty good hand here. Ace, king, queen, 5, suited to the ace. I'm gonna re-raise this. Haven't really been re-raising too much. And I think one of the re-raises that I made in one of the earlier matches, he just folded to, which is definitely a good result. So this is like a really close spot for me. It seems like all 3 of the options are pretty good to me here. I think bet call is probably not too bad of a plan because I mean we only have a pair of 5s in terms of our made hand, but we have 3 overcards to the biggest card on the board. We have some backdoor straight draw potential. So I feel like once we bet, Phil is probably going to interpret this as a good board that he can bluff raise because this is pretty hit or miss. There aren't going to be too many draws that he has to be worried about me reshoving over his initial raise. And B, I think it's also a good board to just bet call this because I feel like a lot of the hands that Phil is going to raise call, we're going to have probably pretty close to enough equity to profitably just bet call it off against them. So that's why I think bet call seems good. I think checking probably seems good too because, I mean, in this situation, it would kind of be bad to bet and probably bet call it off just because our hand is not necessarily like super strong to the point where we're going to be very happy about getting it in. I think it's going to be very close between bet call and bet fold. So exercising some pop control and waiting for like a queen, a king, or an ace or something like that to hit on the turn, or a 5, also seems like a pretty good idea here. And then check raising also seems like a good idea because if we check, there's probably a pretty good chance he's going to stab at this pot. And then we can shut him out of the hand with our pair of 5s and like our backdoor 2 pair draws. So I mean, all the options seem pretty good to me here. As it turns out, I'm gonna just bet half pot here and see what he does. And he makes a really big raise to 680. I think this is really close now between shoving it in and um, folding, and the reason for that is I feel like if he flopped like a really big hand in this spot, for example, if he flopped a set in this spot, I think he would do one of two things. I think he would either call and let me keep barreling with a hand that's not going to have very much equity at all against his hand, or I think he would make a small raise, like something to 400, because he's not too worried about a card peeling off and me just calling his raise. He doesn't need to shut me out of the pot right now. So I think because he makes a raise of this size, I think we can eliminate the one hand that we're very worried about shoving against, which is a set. But at the same time, if he makes a raise to like 400, I also think there's some small chance that he's bluffing, in which case we win the pot uncontested. So there's not that benefit available to us in this situation where he makes it 680 because he's basically committing himself. I don't think he's ever making it 680 and then folding because pretty much any hand that raises to that amount is going to be committed. Um, I'm gonna fold here. It might be a bad fold, and Phil shows a hand that we're probably slightly ahead of, maybe coin flipping against. But with all the money in the pot, my fold is definitely incorrect against that hand. So that's a spot that I should probably run some equity calculations on when I have some more time, and I'll maybe post them up in the video thread because I feel like I might have the 40% um, or so equity that I need in that spot against his range. So right here, Queen, Jack, Jack, 9. I'm just going to open from the button. He folds. He limps the button. I have a pretty coordinated hand here, king, queen, queen, 9. I'm going to just raise. Um, he's been raising pretty much all of his buttons against me so far, so I would lead me to believe that he's probably going to be very weak in that spot when he just limps the button. Sure enough, he just limp folds. So right here I get 3, 4, 5, 5 rainbow from the button. I'm just going to min raise. And he re-raises. One of the things that I've learned in playing some heads up PLO at 510 is folding to re-raises unless you have a hand that's like the bottom 10% of hands that you're opening from the button is just going to be incorrect because hands run so close in value, hot and cold, and having position on someone in PLO as opposed to hold'em is a reasonably bigger advantage. And both the reasons that you should pretty much be calling most re-raises when you're playing someone heads up. So right here, Phil bets 150 into 240. Let me pause right here and clue you guys in as to what I'm thinking. I think any hand that Phil missed this flop with, any sort of run, even like kings, queens, jacks, something like that, I think he's going to bet. And the reason for that is I think this is a flop that he expects to have a good amount of fold equity on. Pretty much any hand that I have that's not a straight draw and not an ace, I think he expects me to fold. I think slow playing in this spot is pretty good because if the board pairs, if like a 6 falls off, even if like another ace falls, maybe not an ace. I feel like he might shut down on an ace, but like an offsuit jack comes on the turn. I think he's pretty much gonna bluff that card every single time. I mean, same I think goes for like a king, a queen, a 10. I mean, any 5 I think he would bet, any 6. And the reason for that is I think when I call in this spot, he puts me on like a straight draw or like an ace XYZ type hand. That's probably just calling one street to see if I can just get the showdown, but probably folding to future aggression. So I think this is a good spot to slow play. Our hand, by the way, is more than strong enough to stack off with, given this short sit and go structure. I think raise calling is definitely a fine play in that spot also. So an 8 falls off. Not the greatest card for us because it completes some straight draws. But I think our hand is definitely way too strong here to not shove here. I think if he has like ace 8. I think he would also play it this way. He could have like ace 6 with a flush draw. There's so many hands. I think that he just keeps betting on the turn. And I mean, he hit like one of 4 outs there on the turn, and he had a straight. But I think my play in that hand is fine too. So we're gonna move now to game 4 of this best of 5 series. J-Man is up 2-1 right now. So gotta win this game. This is an elimination game. I'm gonna check this back. There are a bunch of cards that could improve my hand to a 2 pair that I can call the turn with. I think it's a flop that J-Man might bluff check raise me on a decent amount. And I'm gonna check again. We have like the straight draw to go with our 5 now. I think bluffing on the turn is fine too, even if he calls with like a 2 pair hand. We've pretty strong equity against that. He checks. It's really hard for me to represent a hand that's value betting the river, so I think if J-Man has a hand like that, I think he's probably going to look me up in that spot. Because I think he would just expect me to check back if I made an ace on the river or 2 pair. So we have king, king, 10, 4 here from the big blind with 1 suit. Gonna check. I don't think leading is too bad in a spot like this. I mean, it makes the hand kind of difficult to play because we're out of position. The hand's not strong enough to check raise, but too strong to just check fold, I think. So I'm going to check call here, and he only bets 40 into 100. 7 of hearts comes there on the turn. I'm going to check. And if he bets here, I'm going to check fold. That 7 completed so many draws that he has to be somewhat concerned that I have one of those draws, so I don't really think he continues a bluff here. I think he just checks and gives up if he's bluffing. And he half pots it. I'm going to fold here. Ace, jack, jack 3 suited to the ace. We're going to open this on the button. And we flop middle set here. I'm definitely going to bet because this is definitely a board that I think he can bluff check raise. I'm just going to half pot it because the board is so dry. I pretty much bet that amount with my entire range that I'm going to be betting on this board. And he just check folds. The reason I think betting on that board is good, and I think this is pretty obvious to most of you, is A, if he made any sort of 2 pair on that flop, I think he's going to check call at least 1 street, so we definitely get value out of the hand. And it's a board that if I'm c-betting a lot, I think I'm going to get check raise on a board like that a good amount because there aren't too many hands that I can continue with and call a check raise. And J-Man is definitely a smart, aggressive player, so I think he would check raise me a decent amount on a board like that. Okay, so right here I re-raise him with king, queen, queen, jack. The flop is pretty dry. There's a heart draw out there, deuce, 9, 9. I'm just going to bet 1/3 pot. If I get raised in this spot, I think that puts us in a really tough situation, but we'll deal with that if that happens, depending on his size. But we definitely want to protect our hand, and we definitely want to protect getting bluffed off the best hand, which might happen. And I think our hand gets turned kind of face up if we check in this spot. And once he calls, I really don't think there's too much merit in betting the turn here because I think this is a board where if he flopped a 9, there's like a decent chance he might slow play. And the flush draw missed, and he could definitely be floating in a situation like that. So I think my plan on the turn was to check call, and then maybe check call, maybe check fold the river, depending on what he does. He might shut down some of the bluffs on the river, so it's not necessarily a check call and then check call river. And I mean, once the king comes, Wonder if I can value bet there against J-Man once he checks back the turn. But I just check it down. And he had like deuce 4, 6, 7 or something like that in that hand. For basically just a deuce with like some kickers. Okay, so right here I raise a pretty strong hand on the button. Ace, king, jack 4, double suited to the ace and king. Flop is jack 6, 5. I have a backdoor nut flush draw, a bunch of big two pair cards, and top pair, top kicker. So I want to check it back there because getting check raise on that board would really kind of suck because of all the cards that could potentially improve us on the turn, and our hand is probably not strong enough to call a check raise. If he makes like a big check raise, because he's pretty much going to shove any turn at that point, because I don't think he's going to check raise bluff with these stacks. So I think checking back and controlling the size of the pot is going to be good for our hand, because there are a bunch of cards that can improve it, and we want to maximize the chances of us seeing those cards. So we have king, jack, 10, 8 here from the big blind. I'm going to re-raise him. And he calls. The flop is ace, ace, 5, rainbow. Again, incredibly dry flop. And because we can get all in by the river by just betting very small on this flop, I'm just going to bet 1/3 pot here. I'd be betting the same amount, obviously, if I was value betting like trip aces or a boat here. And doing so allows me to bluffer just 1/3 pot in this situation. And J-Man calls. Turn does not really change much. If he had some sort of like a deuce 4 hand with like a pocket pair or a 5 or something like that, he has a straight now. But other than that, let me pause here. But other than that, the board really doesn't change. I think this is actually a good spot against a smart player to bet one more time. And the reason for that is I think this is a flop that, A, because I'm betting really small, I think J-Man might decide to float me here in position, knowing that once he calls on a flop like this, he's very likely to have an ace, so he's going to expect me to just check the turn and usually check fold. So I think it's a good spot for him to float, and I think there's a decent chance he might be doing that. So I'm going to bet one more time, and if he calls or raises, obviously I'm done with the hand. I would expect him to fold out his floats here because he probably doesn't expect me to continue here on the turn with a bluff. I'm going to bet like 290. The reason I'm not betting like 200 here is because I need to bet big enough that sets up effective stacks on the river that are smaller than pot. Because J-Man, I think, would definitely reason out that if I had ace 5 or ace 3, or even like ace king, queen jack, or like some hand like that I'm betting for value, he would definitely expect me to size it on the turn such that I would be able to get all in on the river, which is why I had to bet that big. And once he raises, I mean, it's pretty much a snap fold. So I'm going to min raise this. I might min raise as my default play with a lot of hands from the button now that I only have like 35 big blinds effective. And on this board, I'm just going to give up with the two middle cards, the flush draw out there, all the straight draws that he can have, and my hand having pretty much no hope for ever improving to be the best hand if I get called or raised. Once the river comes in this spot, actually, I think this is a good spot to bluff if he checks because I can definitely be value betting ace queen. Um, and he's pretty much shown no strength throughout this entire hand. It's a small pot. So I'm not really sure he's going to look me up light here if he has two pair either, thinking that I have a hand like this. so many of my hands have made like a straight, or like a strong two pair that he would expect me to just check back by the river that I don't think I'm going to get looked up in that spot. And I'll show him that bluff. So right here, I just call a raise with double suited 8-8, 6-10 from the big blind. And I think this is going to be a strong enough hand to just go with, considering I flopped a flush draw, gut shot to the nuts, backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw. An 8 also could be a good out here. So I'm going to check here and check raise once he bets. And he bets 90. I think the question now is whether to check raise to some small amount like 270 or to just check raise pot. And I think check raising pot is the better option in this spot. And the reason for that is, let me pause here to explain. I think when I check raise pot in this spot, if he has a hand like ace, king, queen, 7 or something like that with like no flush draw, I think he might just fold a hand like that, thinking that I'm definitely committed with my hand because I would never check raise pot to this amount, and I think he knows that. And the board is also draw heavy enough that if I had a really strong hand like 9-9, I would probably also check raise pot with that too. I mean, the other reason he would also call a check raise to 270 lighter with a hand like ace, king, queen, 7, um, other than the fact that he's getting other than the fact that I could be bluffing because I made a small check raise, is also that it's only going to be $180 more to him, and he might think that I have some sort of a draw or even like ace 9 or something like that against which he has a bunch of outs. Is another reason he might peel a little bit lighter if I check raise the 270, and we definitely want a hand like that to fold. So I'm just going to go ahead and check raise pot here. And he shoves, call. And he has aces here. Um, Phil and I have agreed that we're gonna pause both of our videos at this moment to leave you guys with a little bit of suspense until the next episode. Again, if you guys have any questions, comments, post them in the video thread, and I'll respond to them as quickly as possible. And um, tune in a couple of weeks to see who ends up winning this best of 5 match.